Welcome back to The Truth About Intuition, Part 2 with Ahsaki Kai. In this episode, we dive deeper into the journey of intuitive discovery, exploring telepathy and the importance of shadow work, boundaries, and self-regulation. We discuss how intuition evolves through life stages, especially for women transitioning through the gauntlet that is perimenopause, to embrace the sovereignty that comes when we begin to share our wisdom. Whether you're new to intuition or strengthening your connection, this conversation offers powerful insights to help you trust your inner knowing and step into your potential. Let's go.
I'm in this telepathy thing because I've been told multiple times by my guides, you're going to teach this thing. I've been putting this off for probably 2 to 3 years now, but I am fully aware now that I am a full-blown telepath. This is my first time saying this out loud, at least someplace where other people are going to hear it. Um, I have figured this out through the process of caretaking. I am caretaking two parents. You know this. You know, my mom has Alzheimer's. My dad is showing very clear signs of the same. And not everything gets, as her brain changes, the communication is dramatically different. She can't find basic words sometimes. Um, so communicating is harder. And I find myself listening in a very different way. Like, what does she really need, want? What is this about right in this moment? It's not that she's nonverbal, it's just her words very rarely match whatever's happening in front of us, or whatever it is she's really trying to convey. So I've had to become a little bit of an empath, kind of feeling into, but I realized at a certain point, and this also came from dealing with family who would come over. And when you said check your energy, I'm like, dear God, I could tell stories that would go on for hours, but the energy that came with them was palatable and it was usually not nice. And I'm thinking to myself, then why come? I'm like, you're not the nurses. This isn't a mandatory visit. You could just stay home. But what I'm really getting is from empathy to telepathy, how hard it is to know what everybody else is feeling and thinking. That's not a comfortable place to live. This too is why many people avoid this ability, because for the empath, and I have a client who really reminded me of this in this season, in the last 4 months, when you are so incredibly empathic, to feel the feelings and dial into what people's emotions are, um, very often you're mitigating around that in addition to whatever else you're responsible for. It's just an odd place to be in, to really be able to tap into people's actual thoughts. Um, Sometimes it can be
Yeah.
relational, sometimes it can be awesome. 'Cause you're like, oh my God, this person really likes me. But simultaneously, it can be a real source of pain to be around people and know they don't particularly care for you. It's not just hurtful, because you're tapping into it and you can't really verify it, it may be in their actions, but overall maybe not. That can be really daunting for people. So I look at all of these little things that I've been learning through myself as, oh, this is why people pause sometimes on all of this ability, because they don't want to be hurt any more than they already are, or they don't want to be hurt by the people around them. Again, it's about changing the story, about shifting what their world is and taking them really out of comfort zones. And being intuitive is really stepping outside of your comfort zone in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to be a lot of things like scary and, full of fear. And simultaneously, I understand why so many people experience it from that prism of like, I'm just barely making it here. Like, I don't necessarily want to be thrown into all of this new information. Can't we just leave it like it was? It's kind of like how everybody reacted after the pandemic, and they're like, can we go back to normal? There is no normal.
Genie's out of the bottle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you've expanded into this, even if it's chaos, but you're changed, you're fundamentally changed, and you won't fit into that outfit anymore. It's too small. Like it's just too small. And I
Small.
think that's nobody likes squeezing into sizes of jeans that are too small. Nobody likes that.
Yep.
But like, I don't know, like you said a lot there, and I'm like, oh, I have thoughts about that. Like, I just think even just in that dynamic, let's say you're stepping into, and there are a lot of people that identify with being an empath and empathizing for people.
Yeah.
Now, my definition of empathy is being open to being with people where they're at.
Mhm.
And to me, that is empathetic, is to allowing for all. And I guess somewhere along the line, I made some sort of a shift from, there was a trauma response in me
Mhm.
to be out there assessing and reading a room, scanning,
Mhm.
hypervigilance in action. Now that's a
Yes.
trauma response, and
Yes.
I'm doing that. And I think I'm doing that to, in some twisted way, maybe I've told myself, to serve others, to make sure I'm there for them. But what
Mhm.
I think is really happening is I'm scanning the room to find out where the tricky energy is in
Yes.
order to make sure I know where it is so that I am more comfortable and I can navigate around it. And then I can wish they weren't there because they're really messy. They're really distracting me. You know, it's like they're making me uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a lot to be talked about around that. That's maybe a whole other conversation. But there is actual research that I'm curious about right now around it's BPD, but it's borderline, right? So there's a researcher, see if I can remember, but there's a researcher that has connected the dots of borderline personality disorder, meaning a disordered see that she backed it up. She's like, when your personality is out of order, like when it's not a death sentence where like you're unfixable. A lot of people don't want to go and look at borderline personality disorder because when you look at like the DSM or the, even the Wikipedia, it's not good. Like it's not good information right now. Like that's old research. Okay. So the good news is that there is sort of connections made from trauma, about how we've gotten our wires all tangled up energetically. And we've now believed that when we go into a room and we think we can feel the energy, that there can be this hypervigilant aspect that is really out there that is projecting our own fears and discomfort to scan a room and pick up. So I do believe there's some intuitive shit going on for sure. I'm not gaslighting people saying you're not feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah.
But it's muddied the waters and tangled the wires. And so there can be people that hang on, and I found solace in the word empath because I was like, a home. I have a home.
Yeah.
I have somewhere I belong. Okay. And there are people like me that there's
now
overwhelming energy.
Yeah.
But what it was a level of dysregulation that was having me live outside myself. And I was more invested and aware and afraid of the energy outside because I would get sucked into it, which spoke more to a dysregulated body nervous system. But I had it only through the years and through, again, things that have crossed my path serendipitously. Maybe yes, no accidents, to help me understand and round the edges out more holistically to make peace with. We are not just one thing. Oh, I'm an empath. I'm going to hang on to that. I'm going to build a house here and I'm going to hang pictures and I'm going to decorate this room. And then someone comes in to say, well, actually, the research says that is almost a disordered personality, like a way of thinking, and it actually pigeonholes you. And there's much more to it, especially around borderline, and that it is curable, that it is untangleable through de-shaming work, through regulating nervous system. And so that's where I kind of go, gosh, there's so many people that can get stuck there and just think that is like, well, that's how I am and that's who I am and that's how I always will be. And so I guess I'm also,
I do hear that language a lot from empaths who are like, this is just what I am. And I'm
I bet I got a lie in it.
right.
It's like,
it's not done, because what I did learn over the last 4 years through a lot, you coined that perfectly, de-shaming work is how to really build. I'm not sure what the word is that I'm looking for here, because a fortress sounds like blocking or
I understand.
I don't mean that at all. I simply mean taking literally processing to the point that you take the charge out of it. So even if
that's it, transmuting the energetic and emotional charge out of
Yeah, out of the experience of
aspects?
even
Feelings, yeah.
knowing of, yeah, because those aspects and I do say that to same as you, like I don't want to gaslight anybody. The feelings that you sense in the room are real, but what you're also sensing in those moments when you pick up on those negating energies in other people, your shadow is identifying their shadow. So you just, you're in that vibrational place where you're seeing things from that vantage point,
Yeah.
and highly likely they're in the same place energetically. That's why you're experiencing it. You're right. There is a process to work through that element and get to the other side of, okay, this doesn't necessarily have to be so painful for me. I will tell you
Mhm.
that's really the process I've been through in the last, again, I'd say 4 years. And so much of it was so loud. I had been told that telepathy was going to come online. I'm like, okay, all right, if that's what you tell me, it has. And being able to process, I mean, you said it at the beginning of what we're
Mhm.
doing right now. You and I processed together. So you were a huge part of me energetically moving from this feels so effing personal, because it did, felt really, really personal, to, okay, I don't think there's a charge here anymore. Holidays have just happened. I really didn't have any of those negative charges. So
Mhm.
I know that we're on the other side of that, but I'm so deeply empathetic to those individuals now that experience the world through that prism, because it's hard. It's very isolating. It feels very weird. And again, I'm looking at the empath because I know that's a word that so many people use to
Mhm.
identify themselves. Telepathy is the far end of that spectrum of the empath.
Mhm.
Um, Being able to hear someone's thoughts is really just the next level beyond being able to sense their feelings. You're just tapping in on a deeper level again, but you're in shadow, and so are they, highly likely. So, what you're experiencing through that empathy, through that telepathic ability, is they may be having great thoughts at the same time. You know what I mean? We're having 1,000 thoughts a minute. Think about it. You know what I mean? They're not all negating thoughts, but that's the part you're tapped into. This is no different from a psychic reading, and you've heard me say this a million times.
Mhm.
We read where we vibrate. So for the individual across the table, if we're not in a space where we can see the sun, the moon, the stars, and the sky, then that individual is going to get a reading at the place that we are vibrating at. I think a lot of the time, whether it's practitioners or individuals trying to read for themselves, we're not as aware, I think, of that part and the probabilities that we get. And P.S., that doesn't have to be a downside either. You need, as far as I'm concerned, the best thing in the world, and this is what billionaires do, is have 20 psychics in a room giving you 1,000 data points of information. Why?
Right.
Because it's all your information. It's all a part of this giant sphere that makes you you. It's all planets and possibilities, but it's your planets and possibilities if all these people are reading for you. So it's, to me, those things are gifts and blessings. Even when you're getting the negating information, it's still informing you of something, even if it's merely informing you, oh, okay, I'm triggered and this is something I need to go figure. Why am I so triggered by this? It is a very weird, and I think this is where I'm separating everyone. When you are empathic, you pick up on those feelings, or when you're telepathic and you're picking up on the thoughts and the feelings of people, that seems like a separate category to me. Like, this is a unique thread of individual who really has to go, okay, I can hear and feel and sense all of these things. A, to own what you're feeling, seeing, and experiencing, and
Mhm.
not think you're crazy. That's the first part. The second part
Right.
is then understanding, and this takes enormous growth on most people's part. Oh, I'm triggered. I gotta still go work on the me parts that are triggered, that are triggered by me knowing this thought or this feeling from another person. In other words, you're basically being triggered in the shadow work in complete silence because nobody's saying anything. You're just picking up on it. It's a tricky business. It
Well,
is.
here's what I want to throw into the mix, which I think it wants to untangle some of this for so many people, because
Yeah.
I think there's maybe an unspoken expectation or belief, or even something you've just, were born into, which is many empaths were born feeling responsible.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this is the
Also a trauma
assumption,
response.
also a trauma response, but it's also a survival. We got to
Yeah,
respect the fact that
absolutely.
we grabbed that, it was like the baton was passed. You were handed to dysfunction, because I don't know anybody that wasn't handed to some form of dysfunction.
Absolutely.
And you were asked to survive it. So to do that, you had to morph, shift, change. You had to get very good at reading things. You had to get very good at reading people. And that was how your intuition was developed.
Exactly.
As soon as this conversation gets, as soon as this part gets considered, which is now let's have a conversation about what responsibility means for you, because we'll end up reaching a point where we get so tired of interpreting information and reading information and feeling fucking responsible for every fucking thing because it's all we've ever known until somebody says, well, let's have a conversation about that. Let's look at that because you have choice. And it wasn't until that moment I was like, oh, no, I don't. And it was like, there was a bit of a, oh, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And it was like, well, it doesn't feel like a choice. And it's like, no, it wouldn't because of what you think is actually going on. So until you explore that belief system that when you walk into the room and you sense someone else's dysregulated shit, and because you're real good at it, that there is a weirdness about like, I need to manage. Notice this. Why am I doing that? Because I somehow believe that I need to manage the room and that I need to pay attention to that because I'm in fucking charge. Like speaks to the 5-year-old that needed to keep mom happy or this happy or that person engaged or like everybody happy, peacekeeper, people pleaser. So it's almost, that's what I'm seeing about that trauma response, but like to understand that everybody has a right to have their own shit. Like that's their shit. But until you're invited into that discussion to say, to actually even look, what is mine? What is theirs? What am I responsible for? Hang on. How do I reorganize this? So I bring all the energy that I've been putting out there, the time, the energy, the attention that I've been overshooting. Now, this is where I use the metaphor of a fountain. I spent a good portion of my life overshooting as a fountain. You know, the water comes up and I was spraying everywhere. You know, I wanted to I want to be here fully, but I want to be here for everybody. I want to serve everything. This is before I even did this work, but it was like, that was who I was. Where can I go? Who can I help? This is my job because I know, because I grew up and I know because I saw my childhood and you know what I mean? And I'm very righteous about it. So don't take that away from me because that's who I am. Do you see how identified I am with it? And so I spent my life kind of overshooting the basin of my fucking fountain. Guess what happens to fountains that do that? They dry up. And then at some point you can't do it anymore. And you think you're broken and you wonder why. And you think, you know, you're the problem.
And you're not.
You're not. It's just a symptom and a wake-up call intuitively to say your life is trying to talk to you through your feelings, through what you're seeing, sensing, like it's all trying to talk to you. And if you don't understand that that is your intuitive channel or highway, then you're going to think you're awful and broken and hopeless. So I guess you can see how multi-layered this, this is. But what an opportunity it is to, we're like fishing. Now I'm going to change. But anyway, the point is I'm going to finish the fountain metaphor first, which is overshooting, dry, nothing to give anymore. Old ways don't work. Okay, now I don't know who I am. Midlife crisis, identity crisis, all hell breaks loose. Then there is an invitation at some point. It's like the hero's journey. I need help. I'm in and now I'm like, I need help. I can't function. Everyone is like, oh my God, she's not able to service us like she used to. What's wrong with her?
That is what they notice.
It's either physical, like I got an ailment, or it's like mentally, I'm like, on depression or whatever, like it will show up. You can't go out anymore. You got agoraphobia. You're something. And guess what happens? It instigates help on some level. And hopefully you're either asking for it or inviting it and things get broken up because you're now working and flowing with what is through surrender. So that's what happened to me, but it happened through devastating losses, miscarriage, losing all of our money, losing my job. I laughed, but it was awful.
Laugh about it. I know, but I'm glad you can laugh about it and cough right now.
But that's because I can see what it was trying to do because I was unwilling to stop shooting out of shooting everywhere. So again, I had to relearn I had to know who I was. I had to relearn who I was, but that's that's the restoration and like coming back home to self. And anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that we are fountains. We get to just flow, but there's an element of flowing into self. People can still take a drink from our fountain. Invitation only. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, here are the people that I want to drink out of my fountain. These are boundaries. These are things like standards. When we have standards about treatment and people that we want to surround ourselves, how we want to feel when we flow,
Yes.
and how we want to feed back into the system.
I love how you
So
say that.
I'm
How we want
being
to feel when we
replenished.
flow.
And so what happens is that now turned me from this overshooting fountain to trying to meet everybody's needs, to understanding my own needs, and then realizing, like, I am not responsible for that person I'm looking in the corner, of this chair over here. I'm not, oh my God, I'm not responsible for you. But to unhook from that idea, it's almost like take the hooks that I had out in everybody. I had like little fishing rods and everything to unhook. There was a period of deep grief, of loss, of betraying, of abandoning, fear of. They're going to think I've gone. They're going to think, guess what? The people that were highly dysregulated, they definitely were like, you abandoned me. And they turned. They really did turn on me, and they said things like that. And I had to hold space for that and understand they had every right to feel like that. And all I could do is explain my side and explain or do my best to try and explain why or how I had changed and where I was at. And that it wasn't really anything against them. It was more of me choosing myself didn't mean I was against them. And to have that conversation repaired some things.
Right.
But I had the clarity because of the work I was doing to be able to articulate, because I'm for myself doesn't mean I'm against you.
Exactly. No, I'm
So
just
then it
looking
was
at
like, so then I'll be with you wherever you're at. And how can I be empathetic? Different. I'll be with you, allow you to feel like radically empathetic. I'll allow all of it. And I'll be here like a good friend. And because I know you got answers. And I'll give you anything I got, but not from an empty cup.
There you
It
go.
will be overflow. It'll be the stuff that pours over, because my job is to, fill that fountain. And that changed everything from that experience for the first part of my life. And now I'm living the second half of my life feeling very side by side, still in community, but more like respectful, and things have just more, I don't know, sharper edges, or not sharper, but that's not the best word, but like everything is in better order.
Yeah, better definition. You're describing, and it's so interesting because I always say this to you, Keri. You're an Aries, I'm a Taurus. I live in the stars, which is ironic because I'm the earth sign. You're the air sign, and yet no, you're a fire sign. But you are always giving the grounding variation of, like when we talk, you're always the grounding part. And I'm listening to you talk about this experience and recognizing, I don't think I put language to it, but you're describing literally what has transpired in my life in the last few years between the caretaking, learning, and just having to redefine relationships in family and look at them differently, respond differently, which meant I had to check me and go, why are you so worried about what these people, who gives a shit what they think? Like, why are you worried about any of why do you even care how they feel? Like, that's not for you to mitigate. I'm all these other folks, like I can barely handle and manage my own feelings, in my mother, and my father making this transition. I'm like, why on earth are you trying to mitigate for everybody else? Doesn't matter how they feel or what they're experiencing. I'm empathetic. As I pulled back my energy, I found people actually talking to me, it's my this or my that, and I can't believe this is occurring. And I realized somewhere in that, you've been unhealthy for a really long time because they're telling you as if you're not experiencing the same thing, or better yet, as if you should be helping them process your mother's transition. I have had to say this sentence to myself 1,000 times, like, your living in the middle of this. This is your mom. You're going through this. Don't get me wrong. Everybody else is having their own
Oh,
variation of that
but
as
it's
well.
like you taking back your rightful place as daughter and no
Yes,
longer needing to carry water for other people or translate or be the
yes,
one,
right.
spinning the plates to
Like
make sure they don't fall.
counselor. Yeah, to play
The
counselor.
plates are gonna
Play
fall, is what I,
Oh my
like
God, the plates are so, I
everybody.
mean, literally and figuratively, because some
Yeah.
plates broke recently in the kitchen. So the
Yeah.
plates are really actually gonna fall. And
Yeah.
I recognize that I'm further ahead of that curve. That's not a judgment in any way. I spent the last 15 years in this. So of course I'm ahead of the curve on understanding that this is going to go in certain directions, and that's okay, and being okay with it. Other people are, they're catching up, but their awareness is just coming online to some of what's happening. It's like, yeah, you don't actually have to help them process this at all. But I had to give myself permission to not do those things first, and then had the bravery to say, okay, I can't be here for you for this process because I can barely get me through this process. Like, there's no way I can do this for you as well. So you're hitting the nail on the head when it comes to boundaries and understanding in all of our empathic, sensitive selves, what our job actually is. And I'm glad this is happening for me in family, because family is always the big one for me. It's the place that I will throw all the boundaries away because it's family, damn it. And I've quickly learned over the last few years, no, they're just humans. Like all the rest of them, they're humans, really. To mitigate from there. Yes, they're family, but also you have to take care of yourself first. Something else, and I've been thinking this the whole time we're talking. Some of this also comes with certain ages, this awareness in women where we start to look around and go, okay, I'm taking care of a lot of people. Who's taking care of me? Is that my job, or is there a person for that? Am I getting a concierge? No. Oh, okay. Then I might have to pull back a little bit. That I feel like that awareness for women 40, we all start kind of moving into a new,
Perimenopause,
there it
it's a
is. Yep.
beast, and it is a big part of it is I think there's even a spiritual unhooking, but a physiological, the hormonal, it all happens at the same time. And it's like shit's got to change, and your body's leading that charge through a
Yes.
lot of things, and
Yes.
it's kicking things. It's like a
It's
mule. It's just
rejecting. Yes, it's like, get out of here. No more of that. And it can be a little harsh because the body is an announcer, like, well, my body is anyway. It's like, oh, back pain. Ha ha. Don't move for the day. And it's like, oh, okay. What was I doing before that got me to this space? And I find nine times out of 10, I am doing too much for someone else.
I,
Almost always.
yeah. One of the exercises that I do in with people I work with, but in that in the tap into trust yourself group like this,
Yes.
I'm teaching people to step into like their intuition and understand what it really is versus
Yeah.
this woo woo,
Yeah.
I'm talking to dead people thing, is about tapping in and just visiting aspects of self, parts of self, head, heart, body, soul. And when you move through that exercise, you realize there are resources and wisdom perspectives in each one of them
Yes.
that you would never have gone and received. You wouldn't realize what a kaleidoscope, a cacophony of wisdom and resource and insight and ahas that you have right
Mhm.
under your goddamn nose.
Yep.
And that this is what you are walking around. And we're like, the big illusion is that we're not that, and we are this multifaceted, resourced,
Mhm.
sourced, deeply sourced um, vessel
Mhm.
that has the ability to receive and offer information, to be
Yes.
a channel, speaking to a channel, and to realize how we can use it.
Yes.
We're not demanded to use it, but it is a tool. It is, I was talking to somebody the other day and I was describing them, which I see many people like this multifaceted, like a Swiss Army knife of, all of, and to bring it together in a way where you use things as you need them. You're not supposed to have them all unfurled and be like, what do you need?
Right.
Because that was the people pleasing. You got to think about when you talked about the perimenopause thing. I think it was Parrish Wilson I was talking, and I'm going to be interviewing her next, but we touched on this and we were talking about how perimenopause shows up. There's the nurturing years of motherhood. So there's the maiden. These are the facets of feminine, the divine
Yeah.
feminine. The maiden energy is like spring. Oh yeah, our boobs are up. We're just, we're all like, we're just
Service
blossoming.
to all.
And
Yes.
then mothering is a whole other, those are the nurturing hormones are there.
Yeah.
And we're like really rooting into homemaking and domestic and nurturing is just the bottom line. It's like nurturing everything. We're bringing
Yes.
things together and we're connecting the dots and we're raising human beings and we're nurturing and we're the center cog of the wheel of the family and all of that. And then perimenopause shows up as we're stepping into these crone
Yeah.
years, and it's literally the unhooking. It doesn't mean to be harsh, but it's like it's almost it's almost like taking something out and putting it somewhere else. I see like these flailing hoses, and they just, and then like plugging it back in. Okay, they're showing me like an operators, the old operators, and they'd be plugging one thing out and
Yes.
putting it.
Yes.
They're like, that's what perimenopause is.
Yes.
We're now unplugging the nurturing and we're putting it back into
Yep.
all of the wisdom, all of the things. Now you get to teach. Now you get to leave the home.
Yes.
Spiritually, energetically, a little bit more, and like branch out and expand yourself to then offer your wisdom in a very active, very intentional, very like grounded way. Your job, that is now your job. And they don't want it to be burdened. It's like an opportunity for you to, it's like where the love wants to go somewhere. It's like that now is where it wants to go. And then, the final stage, which is Hag, and she's done talking. She doesn't need to talk because she is a knower and a seer. And when she does talk, everybody shuts up because she's when she talks, it's like, what, when she talks, people listen because, what she says isn't fucking around because she's got one foot out and one foot in. And she's like,
and she's got lifetimes of wisdom. So she's not telling you just for, just to hear herself talk. She's telling you for a reason. I think I had just recently came to these words. This crone era is starting to make me ticklish. I love it. Um, I also love being called auntie, like all the time. It makes me happy. I almost feel like the respect I've been looking for my entire life, I have just accidentally earned sheerly by existing, getting to 50. I'm like, yeah, this is not bad. I like it. Even some of my clients and students, like my Gen Zers, they actually call me auntie. Coolest thing ever. I just think it's so cool because I'm like, yeah, that I feel like I've been preparing for the crone era since I was about 13. I do. I feel like my whole life, most people have already thought I was in some parts of that phase, and I really wasn't. But now I'm like, yeah, if Goldilocks had three beds to choose from, this is the one that I am in love with.
Well,
Because
think about it, because you are, on society's term, childless,
Mhm,
marriageless,
mhm,
right? And the
mhm.
burden of that, or just the constant effing fight. I love how I choose when to say the F word and when not. Like, what am I doing? You say it once, you say it,
It's
whatever.
channeled. Don't
Just work
worry.
with me.
Yeah.
But like that journey would make sense. That bed wouldn't always, because it would be filled with
Yeah.
confusion, confliction, contradiction,
Yep.
just confrontation, inside, outside. Oh my God, get me out of here. And now there's like this permission
To
because
just,
of choice and
yes,
just like ownership from your part
yes.
to then be like, now this,
Yeah.
yeah, like this
Now
is
we're
my
talking.
home. Like, come on in. And that doesn't mean you weren't mothering. That's the thing. What I love about what you're demonstrating,
Yeah.
what you're embodying right now, is that you were mothering, and it's like it wants to be, delivered to you and be like, you see, like,
Yeah.
and there's a new, as women, we mother, like
Yeah.
we're built for it, whether we have children ourselves or not.
Absolutely.
Anyone listening that is but
Yeah.
it's not normalized, it's not celebrated, it's not articulated and amplified and
Yeah.
equalized. You know what I mean?
I heard Tracy Ellis Ross speak to this, Diana Ross's daughter, the most famous of them, I imagine anyway. She said the aunties really aren't appreciated. Like people don't get how what a big a role the aunties are playing, which is true. My aunt played a major role in my life from literally since I could walk onward. I have played a very heavy role in both my nephew, but my nephew in particular. Like, yeah, and also I think about what I've done professionally. You're right. I've been mothering all along. I just chose to do it in different ways, and I don't have any regrets about how I chose to do it in particular, the intuition teaching. Like, it's a spark that you know this because I heard you when you talked about the first round of your course, I could hear it in your voice. That knowing that you have turned the spark on in people, even if, you know what I mean, it was just something you said, and it's like, this is the container that allowed them to turn, what you're doing is turning on somebody's soul knowing that is a gift from God like no other. I really, really relish in having been able to do that for so many people and likely will do it for many, many more in years to come. But it's just there's a certain spark, a feeling about it like, wow, this is really important work. This is, in my mind, it's God's work. It's no different from, and I don't mean this flippantly, but to me, it is no different from taking the role of clergy or, becoming a priest or a nun. There's a certain call to these gifts and facilitating these gifts for other people that is deep. It's profound. It doesn't come from some hollow or shallow place. It's truly oh, this is my purpose. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's an amazing feeling, and I'm just really glad to be in the era that matches that feeling
Mhm.
really well. Like that's a
Right,
great.
because when you said the whole priest thing, it's like I just felt like somebody walked over my grave because it's like I
Oh.
know that many people like doing helper work, and we're going to talk about past lives for a second. But like there's past lives and vows made, in those past lives that were just they get stuck in us, I think, on a soul level. And so I've actually worked with people that are like, none of this feeling makes sense, and because my life is this, it doesn't reflect the feeling. Things seem like they're okay, but I have this feeling and it feels really old. And I'm like, oh shit. Oh shit. Okay. But
Yeah.
when you talk about like it's very, priest or godly, but the thing is, those roles were so bastardized. Everything was so ruined by man and interpretation that even as we were priests, nuns, whatever, godly people in former lives, it was so wrecked and ruined, and we wrecked and ruined. We
Yes.
we did the damage too, and that there's so residual, like, and even just in today's day, there's a lot of like baggage and gross around that affiliation. But the God spark, that's
Yeah.
how it goes through the human channel and gets completely messed up. But like I hear what you're saying, and I agree that it is, but God's work it's the full spectrum, like everything that is here is to be played with, worked with, curious about. That's why shadow work, I get annoyed with that term a bit, because it's like it makes it feel like it shouldn't be included in the full piano keys, dun dun
Ah,
dun dun.
yeah.
It's in the same piano keys, like the high notes, and we're encouraged to play with the full keyboard,
Yes. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's funny you use piano for that, because piano is highly relatable to me. I think to my instantly what came into me just now, I'm like, right, all the keys, the black keys and the white keys. I don't mean that from a racial perspective. I mean that from a shadow and light perspective.
Yes.
Um, we look at, and I genuinely believe we're coming out of this in the holistic, where we have all been so mired in the idea of light only and leaning into these very specific words that suggest it's always going to feel really good. And that's not real life, but you're right. From a PR standpoint, it has to be said a certain kind of way so people want to embark on it. And it's really about the result. The result of doing shadow work is magic. It just is. There's never been a time where I have done a hypnotherapy session or frankly a session with you. Or I could name half a dozen other people right now where I come out on the other side once it's processed, whatever the it is, I go, oh, there's such relief for me, relief also comes with a body experience because my body has now been trained to actually do release work. So that means there's another layer that comes afterwards where my stomach, does a thing, or it comes out literally in the bathroom. I won't get
I was
detailed,
gonna
but
say we're on the
you get
toilet
the
with
idea.
yeah.
Literally like
Yeah.
a purge. Yep,
The
like my
body
body will
keeps
just
score. The
purge out.
body deserves a minute, yeah,
Yep.
to
Yep.
recalibrate. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like your physical body's like, oh, okay, new reality. This is no longer a thing. Let's go ahead and
Let
put
it
it
go.
out. Yep,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and purge that right on out of us. And
Yeah. It's
that
wild, isn't it?
is amazing. I love that because I've gotten familiar enough with it in myself to know after these parts are over, there is another level of freedom. There's another level of freedom for the soul. Every piece of shadow work that we do, there is another level of freedom for the soul because we are now free of the shadow that was harboring over this whatever issue it may have been. For me, a lot of it has been I'm here taking care of my parents. All childhood things have come up in the last 4 years, and I mean every single one. Stupid stuff that I thought I was really done with, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to look at that again. So there's been a lot of self-examination on why do I care so much? Why does this bother me so much? Got to the other side of it, but still, there's just so much opportunity there in asking the questions, especially when we're going through the harder things. Even if you can't do the full examination right at that moment. And I know for a lot of people, when you're in crisis, like, who's got time for this right now? I don't have time to sit and have a chat with you. That's okay. But hold on to this little piece of information so you can find that freedom for your soul on the other side of the transcendence through whatever it may have been. It won't kill you. In fact, it's going to make you feel more alive. That's really
Yeah,
what shadow.
it is a hard sell, but I guess this is why so what I loved about when this tap in course sort of found me, because I was driving and it all started in my head, and I was like, it was a culmination of exercises and exploration that I've done personally and with other people. When you put them together as a sequence over 6 weeks, it's very doable and you get to dip your toe in, but you get to experience it. So I didn't want to just, it didn't want to be theory, in terms of intuition.
Yeah.
It wanted to be deeply experiential,
Mhm.
and where you understand how your inner vision, your inner senses, your inner language works, how you receive information, how you interpret it. And I also understood that there's some people that don't see things. Like when you go into meditation, they see nothing and they get very
Yes.
frustrated. I forget the
Oh, yeah.
name of it, but there's like a
Yeah.
whole condition that people have named.
Mhm.
I love how we give things like names very quickly. It's like that's a dysphoria or whatever the
I
hell, not
know.
dysphoria, but
We have a name for everything now.
it's a thing. And
That's
I'm like,
so
that's
true.
amazing. We got a name for it. So the approach also honors that, because I'm like, here's what I know is that because I was one of those people that never saw anything in meditations
Yeah.
until I did. It happened
Yes.
later, but it only happened later because I was willing to open up to other things, because I might not have seen something, but I sensed something.
Mhm. You felt it.
And I was like, oh, it's like and then I played with metaphor. Hence, that's the birthplace of why I talk in metaphor a lot, because that's how my intuition helps me out and helps those I work with, because they
Yes.
try to find things relatable. And so it started coming through metaphors or a sense or a knowing. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just going to go with that. And so it's very multifaceted, where it's not just, do you see it? Do you see it? It's like, no, there's got to be better questions. If it had a color, if it had texture, if, what would you sense if it had a temperature? So it used
Right.
very somatic, accessible, and it's like strewing as well, like kind of throwing. It's like, to me, it reminds me of going to kindergarten, and when the teacher had prepared the room and there are like tables with paints all ready to go. You know what I mean? It's like, that feeling
Oh,
that
yeah.
you had, if you ever had it, when you walked in and you were like,
Yes.
oh my God, all the stations. She's got the crayons and the
Anytime.
friggin' thing, and she's
Oh,
got the
yeah.
paint there, and it's our, which one do I want? And
Right?
then your intuition was like, I want to go finger paint. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and then you'd be like, I want to finger paint. And then you go finger paint. Then you'd be done with that. And then you'd be like, what next? And then you
Right.
go to the next thing. And I think that's how I wanted it to feel like in a way where
Mhm.
it was delightful because whatever was arising, I'm facilitating, saying, hey, trust whatever arises, no matter how weird it is, or
Yes.
how like, that's not how I think it's supposed to look.
Yes.
Listen, do me a solid and let's play with what is coming up. And I'll show you.
Yes.
I'll do the I'll do the, what do you call it? It's like training wheels. And
Mhm.
I'll show you how that's relevant to whatever
Yep.
you're going through right now. And I won't know anything about the details of their life.
Yep.
But I'll say, okay, now talk through what is coming up. And then I'll say, so what's important about this? And I'll relay what they've said. And then they'll go, oh, because they'll have received an intuitive, oh, shoot, now I see how that connects with. And I'm like, so what just happened there? You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, oh, shit. Like, they're like,
Like, oh,
and I'm
yeah.
like, there's your intuition. Now you're
Yep.
in. Now you're in. And they're like, oh my God, it's just dropping in connect. It's helping me connect dots. Yes, it is. Like,
Yep.
and so I get so excited. I mean, you can see it right. But I just get so excited because I'm like, you're getting it. You understand. You're tapped in. You're online, meaning you're in. You're back in the house. You're back behind the wheel, and
Yes.
you realize, holy shit, I am so much more. Like, look at my face.
Mhm.
My face is like, was my face when I went through it. Oh my God, I am so much more than I thought I was. What else am I? Do you know what I mean? Because
Yep.
up until a certain point, I assumed I was the bad feeling. If I feel shame, I must be wrong. If I feel
Yeah.
bad, I must be bad. So I don't want to go looking for that stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then when I learned what else it was and how I was able to connect other dots that released me from the prison of believing all of those things
Yeah.
that were so burdened, it was a new life. It was a revelation. It was a rebirth. Well, there was death. The death was the belief. The death was the lens that was so clouded with
Yep.
conditioning. And so
Yes.
to provide delightful exercises for people to explore on their terms without force, with like just natural, like whatever's arising, your soul is only going to deliver the very accessible and meant for you thing that is going to open up the next door, that is going to present the next step, that is going to really meet you where you're at. I'm not, so that is, it's funny because you are out in the stars. You know, there is an element where you play in the stars, and I love that, and you bring them down to us. And you go, look, potential, here it is. And then it's our business to go, oh, I love that one. Off I go. And I'm
Yep.
going to go try that. Or sometimes, like me, I'm like, I don't see how that's possible. And I don't get it. And you'll go, fine, you can, and we don't fight, you know, but it's like, I respect that. I'll respect your blindness. And then 6 months later, I'm like, Ahsaki, remember that time when you said you saw me with a dog, like in the car in like a Middle Eastern country, and I was moving from one house to another, and this dog was traveling with me, and I was like, "You're crazy. That makes no sense. We're traveling. Why would I have a dog?" Just so you know, I ended up rescuing a dog in Morocco. And the vision that she told me 6 months before that of me traveling with a dog in the console, in the center console, looking up at me, and it was golden. And like, and I was like, that's stupid. Why would I have a dog when I'm, she's like, it's
What?
your dog. You kept saying, it's your dog, Keri. And I was like, fine. She's like, listen, I'm just told to tell
Damn
you.
dog. Okay,
And you're in a
whatever.
car, she said, and you're in a car, and there's boxes. Guess what? When I was moving from the villa the really expensive place that we got stuck with in the COVID thing, to the Riyadh that was very much more affordable, we were moving, and I looked down Betty's face, the dog that I had rescued,
I remember Betty.
looked up at me, and I could see the boxes around her, and I was like, taken back to the moment when I was so annoyed with you. Do you see? So it's like you, so not only do you give us potentials, but those specific deja vu, like, oh shit, you know, it means I'm on track. It means I answered the call. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh my God. And I call, and I'm like, all right, you know, and I still give you shit today when you'll say things and I'll go, no. And you're like, fine. And we laugh because we know when that happens, just wait. It might show up. It might not, but it might. I love that there's this element of you and the stars bringing them down for us to see potential, to grab hold of and to run with, or to pursue, or for them to find us anyway. You know what I mean? And the journey that takes us on. and that I love that, because I really feel like, and here I am on the ground drawing from within the stars within, it's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
and they're there for you to grab hold of. And there is almost an equal expansiveness in the other direction. I see a human being on the earth, and there's stars available to them. And that's sort of where you come at this about potential. And it's not that I don't do that work, but I don't do it in the intuitive way that you do it, where you get some specifics and you help people tap in and stuff like that. And I think that's also so powerful for people in the healing industry to, or the healing world, to understand they can do so much more with this stuff. And then there you are helping them. There you are. And then here I am saying, okay, there's a journey, yes, to go out there and to venture.
There you go. Yep.
And then but to do that, if you feel like your body, your heart, your mind, and your soul cannot do it.
Yep.
There is an equal and opposite journey within, with stars that I can, and I never saw it. I never saw it like
that. Oh my God. You're speaking to this star being thing magnificently. This by itself, this little piece here is really the beginning of a whole other anthology, because we are star beings. And you're speaking to this star seed in us and how it connects to the universe and all of the stars. This is a magical conversation, and it's just so on target. Like, yes, this is it.
You want to know what's so funny about this? So, okay, so I'm going to tell you, and this isn't to disrespect you or anyone else that knows about the expanse of the stars and star seeds and all that. And I'm going to say, and all that shit. You know what I mean? Because I have a visceral response to anything. I get really itchy about when people use new age terms, and it feels inaccessible, and it feels like I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Like I remember being like, hearing about chakras through a very intuitive experience that I had. And it was a book that I was like, chakras, that's bullshit. And like, I put it back. I didn't know anything about them. So I shoved it back it fell out of the shelf. Right. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Like it's going to have all my answers. And I was like, so bitter. Again, intuition can show up here too, in bitter and distorted.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to be all fixed to get it.
Yep.
And I was like, fine. And I thought this was going to be my magical opportunity to fix myself by this magical fucking book that fell out the fucking shelf. And I went to shove it back in, more pissed off than I was before. I thought it might save me. And it was the book that my hand touched beside it that said how to get to where you are, how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And I was like, shut up. Like I literally was like, just shut up. You're a stupid book. Why did I see you? Like, do you see, this is how it all starts. So where was I going with that? I don't know. All that to say, I love that. Oh, I know it. Yeah, because I hate that stuff. So I'm just like, I don't hate you, but I'm understanding in this very moment, you're seeing it live, about why I have a very visceral, like, no, you can't, I just can't. Anyone that works with me, when they start, I'm like, I don't talk in those languages. I don't know who my spirit guides are. I don't know what ascended master I'm talking to. I was told, you're not supposed to give a shit about that because it's distracting. It will distract you. Now you could name your shit. You could, right?
But you're right. It can be very distracting. I know a lot of practitioners who spend all their days telling you about which ascended master they're channeling. And it's all this bravado. I only talk to Jesus and Melchizedek. I'm like, shh.
Melchizedek or whatever. To me, it dilutes the whole thing. And I was told, don't do that. Don't do that. And I was like, okay, you know what? Whoever's talking to me, that works for me because I don't need to know that shit. That feels like a burden. That feels like a responsibility.
That's exactly. That's how I feel about the origins of man stuff. I'm like, okay, I could go down this rabbit hole, but I'm like, holy God, this is a lot of information. I understand where you're coming from. The star
so I respect,
me, but I definitely get where you're coming from because historical stuff for me, where it ties into this world that we're in, is so much information. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is all my responsibility, knowing who I was in Egypt and all. I'm like,
yes,
we don't need to do all that. Yeah.
But what is important is how that Egyptian princess felt. Who gives a shit about the thing that was on your head? Do you know what I mean? Or like the crown or whatever.
And the lesson,
how did she feel? So,
yep.
So again, if somebody ends up in a past life experience with me, they'll get details, sure. The
Yeah.
human being will get fascinated with the cobblestone streets and the this and the that. And I'm there to say, that's all great and everything. But like, what are you experiencing and how are you interpreting it and what feels important? And like, what are the feelings or what is the information that you're getting, as opposed to, again, I'm not trying to shove it all out the window. It's just, I'm understanding now from a very I'm meant to speak things on a very pedestrian, accessible,
You are.
human, because we're here to
And
be
I'm gonna
human.
tell you, I know you are, and I know there's a certain magic to how you go about doing it because people can't hear things from these esoteric like how long have I been calling myself an alchemical something because I'm trained in alchemical hypnotherapy. Most people don't know what alchemy is. And they're certainly not using this word on a regular. I had to learn those things, like come out of these stars enough to understand you're not talking to humans anymore. You're onto something. And people need so badly because where we are in this story, I believe, as a full collective, there are far more people who need the reach them where they are variation of spirituality that actually speaks to their lives and what's happening. They need that more so than anything else right now because otherwise it's too far out. And I know we as spiritual
Yes.
teachers, we do this a lot when we
Bypass.
transcend. Yeah, we get to these places and
Yeah.
then we're like, okay, and now I'm teaching about this. And I'm like, this is why it's so important. Like, no, it's not that simple. I say the same thing about the spirit guides and the angels and all that. A lot of people, especially I find who come from religious backgrounds, like heavy religious backgrounds, the guardian angel thing is an easy walk-in for them because they talk about angels, right? Catholicism talks about angels, Christianity talks so that's easy for them. So for them, that's the pedestrian language where it's like, okay, I can be comfortable in this place of talking about angels and then getting intuitive data from that. So again, just going back to that four-leaf clover, all of the different highways and roads and ways and to access information, some of it is about your familiarity with what you know what I mean, in your own life walk. And some of that actually comes in religious. I'm almost dumbfounded sometimes the way I channel right now. If you didn't know any better, you'd think I was a kid who grew up in the Christian church. I'm not. But that's how a lot of what I channel sounds because that's the part we are in the story. Meaning when I'm big boy channeling, macro, not micro, not necessarily for me
Right.
personally,
Like
for the
global sort
planet.
of,
Exactly. And that's my favorite thing, honestly, to do
oh my
because
God,
it's so
why?
expensive. Like, oh,
Oh my
give it all
God.
to me. Tell me everything. Yeah, I love that. I do. I love that
And
energy.
I'm like, why? It's too much, man. Like,
It
it's
is.
too
It's big.
much.
It's big.
Because wouldn't a part of you feel like hooked or kind of response? Like,
Nope,
just, it's, no,
not
good.
anymore.
Thank God. Thank God for that.
Morocco. Morocco.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why I've had to have a lot of Morocco experiences. Another really good friend of mine who's also, learned from me at different points. She and I had a major come to Jesus conversation less than a few months ago. And she said, I really want to apologize because I put all this weight on you for you said a thing and I'm angry with you because it didn't happen. And I said, I know. I said, I want you to know that was one of the most important lessons I had to walk through because I'm walking through it with a friend. Again, not unlike talking to you, you're in Morocco. I'm saying things that contradict your family. I'm like, this isn't comfortable at all. But it teaches you quick as a practitioner how to detach and go, this is the information that is coming in. You don't have a judgment on this. You've heard me tell the story about my first
Yeah.
public reading with the young woman, and I'm busy holding back, not wanting to tell her a piece of information. Finally, I spit it out at the end of her reading, and she looks at me like, yeah, I kind of figured that. And I'm going, seriously? All this judgment. And little do you realize you have no idea what's happening on this girl's planet. You're just a conduit for the information. My job is to disseminate it. Does that mean I don't have moments where I'm like, oh, I'll do it? Remind me.
You are,
um,
now you are human. Now, this is the piece, right? So I think I want to give an example for people to understand
yeah,
how multifaceted, I don't know if it's multifaceted, but it's like there's other shit going on. So picture me as a 2017. I'm still very, very impressionable.
yep,
I spent a year exposing myself to intuition, to psychics. I've got them all around me. At that point, I
yes,
think there were four I was quite close
yes,
with.
yep,
And I was just so impressionable and, again, holding them up here, you up here, and feeling like I cannot be that, I am not there, and all these things. And then this retreat idea ends up unfolding. And it unfolds and it's unfurling and it's easy and it's flowy and all these things. And I'm learning, I'm starting to even detach a little bit and understanding I can own this experience I'm having of my own intuition and my own instincts, and to follow them with both, but I'm being strewn, I'm being presented with information to acknowledge, to respond to based on how I feel. So again, I was realizing I'm always being invited to go back home to myself, to ask myself sovereignty, to remember to sit on my own throne and move whatever information I get through you, through God, even, whatever it is. How does that feel for me? And again, notice how, depending on how regulated you are, it might be problematic. It might not be a great, 100% read. And by the way, we're never going to be 100% clear. So let's just, because we're human and we've always got Band-Aids in our filter, as I say. But so that's humility, to understand, like, okay, this isn't a perfect science. This is all play. This is all, whatever. And so it was in that zone. And it was, I think, like a month before my retreat. And I'd always heard you say, and I hear other practitioners say that are like professional psychics, the guides are never wrong, right? So then I'm like taking that literally, like that means what she says is gospel. And she knows more than me. So again, that's how it's interpreted. At least it was through me. And I remember it being like, okay, well, that's okay. I can respect like that. You held it with such conviction. I was like, I respect you. And I do respect guides are always right. So you have this confidence, right? So, and I learned so much through that. And then we had a session once and you were like, no, we didn't. You called me. Okay. So this is where it's like personal. You call me, you're like, hey, I have a question for you. It's a month before or something. You're like, is the retreat in April still happening?
I remember.
And I was like, what? Like, I didn't say that to you, but my body was like, what? Meaning it was like, oh shit.
Right.
What does she know? What does she see? Right. Oh, fuck. Is she going to tell me the thing that she see? Oh, it's all going to follow it. That was the beginning of like, oh shit. But what I noticed was something came over me and was like, no, be cool. So I was like, yes. And you said, well, I just got this weird feeling. I got this weird feeling that it might not be happening. And you came back at me and I was like, what is she trying to do to me? Like, because a previous version of me, even on the first mention of like, is it still happening? I would have been like, what are you saying? What do you see? My life is in your hands. You are responsible. Whatever you say. I don't know if I would have been that drastic with it, but there was a fear, I guess, that maybe I would hand over my decision-making to an external source.
A lot of clients. This is important what you're saying, because this happens a lot.
Okay. So and then I said, give me a second. You said, okay. And you were like, you weren't any way. You weren't like heavier. You were just like, you literally just showed up on my doorstep with this really big question. And it had to come from you, of course, the one that sees and knows, and it's so heavily weighted. And I was like, give me a second. And you're like, okay. And I just closed my eyes and I was like, is there any part of me that feels like this retreat might not happen? And I just explored just for even just a couple seconds. I couldn't have manufactured anything other than what was, you know what I mean? Like I would have to reach outside of myself for past parts of me to pull them back in and say, are you still alive? Neurotic part? Are you still, anxiety? Because, all I could feel was, I don't sense anything wrong, bad, off. So I said, it still feels like it's going on. And there was still a bit of trepidation in my voice. And then you went, okay, cool. I was just going to buy my ticket. So, okay, thanks. Bye. And I was like, what a moment. I have to get,
I remember
what it was for me.
I actually remember this. Oh my God.
It was the moment that the gauntlet, it was like past, it was like all of a sudden I was back in my throne. Like I was like,
You decided.
I decided, and part of it was like, yeah, but she always says the guides are right. And what I got in that moment, guess what?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that was freaky. Like I felt like I was on a tightrope, like I could have slipped and fallen and just gone back to old ways now.
Yes.
And I sat there and I was like, so this is how my intuition was working back then. It still works like this now, but I went, what the fuck was that about? Like, I wondered to myself, I even said it out loud probably. No, really, anyone listening, F was that about? Because that was tricky. Like, I could have.
What bullshit's going on here?
What I got was that it was just this feeling of like, what did it have you do, Keri-Anne? And I was like, oh, what? And I was like, oh shit, I stopped. I got grounded. I asked myself. And they're like, yeah, you did. And they're like, and that is something that we cannot manufacture. That moment of clarity, of ownership, of growth, you witnessed it in real time with yourself just now, and she helped facilitate it. So guess what? Guides are never wrong. So they were right to lead her down that, to give you that call so that you had that experience, because that is what mattered most. You actually locked in the learning that is integrated, locked in, never going back. Not that I think there is ever going back, but there was that feeling of like, I finally felt like I'd opened up another chapter of ownership and like personal, like, and I think I said to myself, even if it doesn't work out or something happens, I'll be fine. It will be fine. I'll figure it out. And that's that newness of like resourcefulness. I was full of resource that I could now access because of the clarity work that I've done on myself. And then I have that available to other people now to hold space for where they don't have clarity, for it to help them find it. But man, that was such a lesson for me about intuitive work, and how, like, I just wish people knew that even when people get it wrong, we're not looking in the right place. We're putting all the burden of responsibility on you, the one that's delivering the message, not seeing the message as an instigator for change, as a catalyst for curiosity. You know?
People think psychic work in general, and this has come up for me because now I'm naming what I do one-on-one privately. Finally, have an actual name for it. Oh my God, look at me, Keri. I'm growing up. And in naming it, I'm recognizing so many people. You're really saying it in that the guides are never wrong. They're not always telling us the future per se. Sometimes they're poking and prodding the question to get us to acknowledge what our soul already fully well knows. So all they're trying to do is get us to go deeper inside ourselves and go, oh, this is the absolute truth. Let's go ahead and walk in that line. Let's go ahead and walk in that path, because now we really know what it is, because we can say it to ourselves. I say to people all the time, and especially my one-on-one clients, I say to them all the time, it is very, very cool to hear from me what your life purpose is, who your spirit guides are. It's cool. It's, oh my God, that's fun. That's exciting. But there is nothing like the feeling of oneness in knowing it and hearing it for yourself. In that soul speak, when you get to know, oh, this is my purpose, or this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's a very different flex, a very different feeling when it comes from in here. I love to facilitate that, but a lot of people are under the impression that this psychic work, this psychic counseling therapy thing is about me telling you what it is and you just simply accepting that as gospel. That would never work anyway. If it did, we'd all be a lot further along on this whole behavioral cognitive therapy thing, because that's all that is. You know what I mean? Like just general feedback. No, it's deeper than that. There's a knowing inside of you that wants the acknowledgement, that needs the trigger to say, oh, this is the truth. The truth is within you. Yeah, you'll hear it from me, and it's cool. It's all, like I said, I've told you about the caves, right? I told you about the retreat. All of that is awesome. But that knowing in the self, that feeling, that depth of this is my certainty, this is my real truth, that's life changing. It is. Every single time it happens, it's life altering. And it's an
I mean,
feeling.
yeah. Like when you said all those things about the caves and stuff, I pursued it under the guise of I was supposed to go to a retreat. And I loved that innocence of it. I love the assumption around it, that I just assumed that's what it was, because but that is how you got it. You were like, oh, I see what now. I don't know. You were like, I see you at a retreat. I mean, you know what I mean? I see me there, or I see so-and-so there. So I combined my assumptions with what you said. I was like, oh, I must be, because that I would never be hosting a retreat. Right. So I could never hold that for myself. Yep. And I found it anyway through the brilliance and just the divine intervention of spirit, my people, their people, through the interconnected web that humans are to one another. That's the other thing that becomes very clear. The more you clear your own hallways, the more you clear the traffic, and you start, letting things move a little bit more. And, to be able to receive and exchange, here's what I want to say, better information. And it sounds like a judgment, and better maybe isn't, but it's like more authentic, closer to source energy. It gets more, I don't know if it's potent or just clear, or like, I don't know, it's actually more sound. And you start to, it's like layers of an onion, but it's like maturing as you go. And so I get information differently now than I did 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that's how that goes. That as we grow and go, that we mature along, and we grow along with these things. And it's just so important for people to understand that there's this catalytic element, whether someone's, it's not even about you having the title of psychic.
Right.
Because I want to open this up for everybody, because I mean, I've been doing this work. Many people listening are realizing, oh shit, I've been more intuitive than I realized, this whole time. And maybe I should claim it, and maybe should explore it, and maybe I should learn more about it, because your intuition, I believe our intuition, it wants us to understand it in a much more broader spectrum, so that we can work with it and open up to it, partner with it, and that it is a relationship, and that it is, it's just so much more than this trite one highway, one source. How fucking limiting is that? So when you open it up, much like the spectrum of many things, because everything is on a spectrum, we start to say, well, then that means I can step into it from where I am. Absolutely, you can, and you're meant to. Because that's the only way to do this. But we won't allow, we feel like we have to work on ourselves in order to.
Right.
No. So there was a moment in my life when, at a very pivotal time, when I just had my second kid. I had been through a lot of loss and gains, the washing machine of life, where I popped out, and I was like, I literally said, so here's a catalytic moment that happened intuitively with a non-professional psychic. She now does healing work now, by the way, which is so amazing. But a friend of mine that I was a roommate with in our 20s, now we're in our 30s, and I was literally like 38 at this point, 37, 38. And I was like, I'm not really living my life. And I was just blurting to her, I was just admitting my shit, just admitting how I felt, and just, I don't care anymore. I'm in a corner, so I got nothing left to lose. And I'm like, listen, I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel like the life police are going to show up and be like, you're not doing this. You're out. Like, let's go. Give me your card. Give me your permit. You're not doing this right. So, and I was so just frustrated. I don't know what to do every time I try to go back into what I think I'm supposed to do. Marketing, like when I say marketing, like professional, go in the corporate world. Like, that's all I can do. That's all I'm good for. Now. And it kept spitting me back out. So I was like, I can't even do that. They don't want me anymore. So it feels like I'm being guided to do something else. And I said, but I don't know what. And I'm just sitting here in my bathrobe covered in breast milk, and I look like hell, and I just felt like hell, and I just laid it all out and barfed it all out. And she was just looking at me, and she leans over and she goes, do you remember that show you used to watch? I was like, did you hear a word out of my mouth? I just talked about my real problems, and you're talking
on topic.
The show was starting over, and it was life coaching before people talked about life coaching. It was like, look it up. It's amazing. Iyanla Van Zandt was one of the coaches. There was a bunch of others, but she was one of my faves. And it was, I loved it. I was obsessed with it. I'd record it and I'd watch all the videos. There it is, that's right there. From that's from like when I was 25, you know, like I was, yeah, anyway, I was nowhere near this life. And she said, "Do you remember that show you used to obsess over?" I was like, "What? I have real problems. How do I talk about a show?" And she's like, "Yeah, but what was it about again?" And I was just like, "Coaching? Like dummy?" Like I was like so annoyed. And she was like, "Well," and she's not a coach. She like worked for the lottery corporation. She had a corporate. She was like out of left field, this person. One of those pragmatic, logical human beings in my life, swear to God.
Right.
And she's like, "Well, why don't you like, well, okay." And I said, "Coaching, like, give me a break. I'm so far from that like dream that I always thought that'd be so cool. Like if you could actually help people like that, but that's a TV show." She said, "Well, listen, will you look into it?" That is the most coachy question because it's, will you do this thing? Now I have choice. How dare, you know, like how dare you show up, right? How dare you be the conduit that says the thing that
Yes.
activates this annoyance because now,
Yep.
yeah, because now I got to answer it. And now I got to say, "Fine, God damn it." You know, and that's what I did. I was like, "Yes, I'll look it." And I was like,
Sounds logical, damn it.
but it wasn't, it was just like, where did that come from? To this day, we laugh about it because she said, "You know what?" And this is, you know, she's not into this. She wasn't at that time anywhere near this world. Neither was I in a lot of ways. I was into the Oprah life class and
Yeah.
I hate to say it, Tony Robbins as well. Ugh. But anyway, they were my lifelines at the time. We've upgraded since then. But anyway, and she was saying, and she said to this day, she says, "Honestly, that was such a weird moment for me," because she says, "I almost had no idea what I was talking about." She goes, I remembered it, but she was like, "I don't know why I said it."
It
So
came through her.
we need to understand that are we puppets? Maybe. You know what I mean? Like in a way, you were puppeted to call me, confront me about the retreat. You answered the call. I answered your call.
That's
And
the
then I
hard
answered
part.
my own goddamn call because the call came from within the house. Do you know what I mean? And so that's who, and then I think, wow, what a powerful relationship that is, that on a soul level, she almost showed up at that time with that thing at that time for me to say yes. And again, what happened after that is a series of very serendipitous, synchronistic, oh my God, what is happening? And it literally changed the entire trajectory of my life. That one question in that very raw moment. I wasn't crying or anything at the time. I was actually really pissed off.
I'm like, as you're telling it, I'm like, you'd have to be because you hadn't become the coach yet. So how would it not be annoying? Like she's dead to rights. I know it just as you're telling it to me, like, oh, maybe you should become a coach. Well, duh, obviously. But when you're in the trenches of a moment like that, nobody wants to hear that kind of truth in those moments. You're like, shut up already. Go sit down in a corner. What are you talking about? Like, no, I don't want to do any of that. I need to hit the lottery. Like, do you have an in where you work? Like, can you be useful to me?
And don't you know, I've already told myself that's too hard. And I've already told myself I can't. So that's annoying. And you don't understand the decades of that I've left. So I'll humor you. But yes, I'll look into it. And then I promised, I made good on the promise. Actually, I mentioned it to Scott right away, which I almost didn't because I was like, oh, he's going to think I'm full of myself. I thought that. I was going to tell him what my friend said. Almost said her name there. But like, yeah. And when I mentioned it, he was like, oh, that's so weird. I met a life coach today. Her name's Karen. Here's her card.
Stop it.
No, that is what happened. And I was like, and that's when, as soon as you're back online and your guides and whatever, you know, your higher self is like, is she, come on. And they're like, come on. Yes. And I'm looking around for the cameras because I'm feeling punked. And he goes, no, really, I actually, like, I chased her down to get her a card because I thought she was so amazing. And like, that's weird. Like, why don't you call her? You jerk. And then I was just like, he said, will you call her again? And I was like, you said, will you? Oh. I said, what? And so I was like, fine. I called her either that night or the next day. And the thing she said to me, she says, Karen, I have never met you, but you've been coaching your whole life. And I was like, what? And again, we fell in love, you know, like, it was this like, what is going on? She says, okay, this is getting weird. You're a bit overwhelmed. Will you just talk to one more person for me? So then you know that it's not because I'm some weirdo off the street. And then she introduced me to my coach, who became my coach. And he opened up what needed to be opened up for me to take the next step that felt right and good and best, but meeting me where I was at. I was fully broken.
Yeah.
And that's all I did. That's all we're meant to do, is meet ourselves where we're at and take the next best right step that feels, even if it doesn't feel comfortable, but we know, oh, even if it's uncomfortable, it's like there's something there. But to have that facilitation, especially in the beginning, is so helpful. It's life-saving. It's saved. I can't even imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't had those game-changing calls. And that is what it's, and again, we don't have to be psychics. We don't have to be, professional coaches. That there's an opportunity in our relationships to acknowledge things that are coming up for us intuitively alongside partners, alongside parents that want to be said, need to be said, or maybe not, but known to self to either process or whatever. But like, there's so much more available and going on that is dynamic, joyful, yes, sometimes painful and challenging, but there's this beautiful cacophony of living and life that is available to us that expands us to the fullness that is life.
Yes.
And it's all through the channel, this intuition what I call intuition.
This connection to the self is really the most magical gift we've ever been given as humans. Most of us, it's unfortunate, but most of us don't get to discover that in full until we're pretty well into adulthood, is what I'm noticing. Um, don't get me wrong, there are young people that I see tapping in, but overwhelmingly, I see between like 26 and 33, 34. I'm sure there's no accident there.
It's a real time, that the 30s, mid 30s, big
And
time.
something else. That is also the era of the Saturn return, as I'm thinking about it, which is typically a bit of an ass-kicking moment. 2.5 years of like, here are all the rules. So we typically go through some trials and tribulations during that little era, whenever Saturn returns to our sign. So this feels like it's right entangled with that, because it would awake, that phases like that would easily awake the self and say, okay, it's time to start paying attention to what's actually coming up and not what is happening all around us. We all have this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is simply a matter of, for many of us, we may think we don't have it, or we don't, like we're not plugging into it as easy as others. Um, and I think a lot of us have those ideas because of life experiences or what we've been taught about these abilities. Or, like I said, we've got a lot of people now falling back into older religions and things like that and kind of rebuking, so to speak, these abilities. We still
Yeah.
all have them. And I'll say something a touch controversial here. If people took a little time to actually look into the life of Jesus Christ, I'm talking between the birth and the death, his life is freaking amazing, y'all. I mean that. The man was a miracle worker, and there are reasons for all of the miracles. There are skills that this man acquired that are the very things that we're talking about right now. I guess I kind of look at it, well, if Jesus did it, I'm pretty sure we're good here. So, to that end, we all have this ability. It's really just a matter of if you want to open yourself up to it. You get to decide that too. Everybody gets to decide. You can go, nope, this is not for me, and I don't ever want to
Absolutely.
walk down that road. Uh, and knowing that it's still available to you.
I think that's really it. And I think, yeah, when I think about the work that I'm opening people up to through themselves as the gateway, the humanity, right? So I love how you help support people that are open to the ethereal and they want to make sense of it, because you really help them put it into perspective and put it in right order. And then there's I don't know where I was going with this. I was like, oh, that's weird. They just cut it. And I'm like, where'd it go?
Can I? I think I may be able to fill in here, and I'm going to tell you how I describe your work. I
I
don't
mean,
think
yeah, I'm so annoyed. They just took it away from
no,
me.
well, that's because maybe I needed to be the one to say it, but I consider you the deep end of the ocean when it comes to how you go about doing your work. There are places, and just like you were just talking about earlier, when I'm like, "There's a dog," and you're like, "There's no freaking dog." Like, what the hell are you talking?
Right? The humanity. That's what I was talking about. The humanity. There
Right? But I'm
it
like,
is.
here, you listen to to sessions with me and you, and I'm like, no, the whole time I'm just being Molly difficult.
Oh, do you mean
So,
from me to you?
oh God, yeah, yeah. Where
Okay.
I'm
Meaning
rejecting all of it, or I'm
what she's
pushing back.
talking about when she is a client and I am a support for her.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'm like, and I'm pushing back hard. I don't understand. I don't want to see this. I just don't get. I totally get it. I just don't like it. So in those moments, I have watched you literally piece me apart very carefully, very magnificently go, okay, let's go a level deeper and let's go a level deeper. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I want to throw the phone, but I simultaneously know we're doing something magical. And when we're done, with that
Mm.
process, I'm like, oh, that's all I was avoiding. This is still about the same thing. It's just about me, isn't it? But I want to fight sometimes in that process.
Yes.
It takes a certain kind of coach who can endure that. Not everybody's built for that kind of coaching. And I don't say that to be cute. I simply say a lot of us have an idea of what this work is, where holding space is always easy, or it's always super friendly. You know what I mean? While people are emoting, and that's not true. That's just not real. No, sometimes I give you the business, but you are, as a consummate professional and detached from, you know what I mean? My outcome, it's like, that's all right. I can still hold this space for you while you act out like a 6-year-old.
Well,
And
it's
when we're
yeah,
done,
you have every right. And even if you threw the phone, I think it's weird for people when they realize, you mean you're okay if I throw the phone? And I'm like, well, yeah, like, but we're afraid of making a mess. We're afraid of
right.
ups. And I'm like, what if that's needed? And then it's like, what? And so I come at it from a very weird, I'm a bit of a weirdo, and
Mhm.
I respect all of that. And I just think, and I guess I learned more to not take it personally. And it doesn't mean I'm not affected. It doesn't mean I'm not
Right,
participating.
right.
It means I'm just honoring wherever you're at, which by the way is super confronting because when there's no pushback and you're being given that moment of full honest expression, it is confronting because can you, will you, who am I to? And it is dismantling
Yep.
in like what I want to say is like the best way because it's a burden to carry that persona
It
and
is.
all those rules
Yep.
for so
It is.
long,
Yep.
and so yeah, it's like I love it and I also don't love it because I understand what that's like because I've gone there, been there myself. And
Right.
so yeah.
You are a phenomenal facilitator of the deep feelings and I will say this two ways, in record time. Not everybody's capable of that, and that I don't mean this to poo-poo therapy, because I really actually really do believe in like CBT. I really do believe in like cognitive therapy. However, what you do in an hour in coaching session is what I would do in 10 sessions in therapy. That's substantial. That's significant. And I don't doubt that you are teaching intuition in that same, here, come in this container. I got you. You're in the right space already. You're free to emote, to do all the things that you need to get to that little seed, that light inside of you, whatever that may look like. You're fantastic at that. Your work is very deep, very embodied. It is very curative of emotional burden. And that is one of the biggest factors to getting to the seat of the soul.
Mm.
It's one of the biggest factors. It's removing the barriers to getting to the
In the
intuition.
road, yeah, and yeah, the Legos. It's the Legos on the hallway we
Right.
step on. It's like, what is that? Um,
Oh my God.
But yeah, there's a real piece of the work that I want to include the humanity. I don't want to bypass it and I don't want to vilify it. I want to include it because that's literally the package we said yes to. And we're delighted in some way, shape, or form on a soul level. We're excited to do it. And I just it's not a problem, you know, like it isn't a problem. It is a classroom for us to discover and learn through. And I want to embrace it and be rooted in the experience of what we're doing here while opening up to the stars, because they're a part of that too. I love the idea of man, woman, human being this conduit between earth and sky. You know, like
Me too.
that there's harmony, there's a that we're the conduit, we're the vessel. And why wouldn't we open up to all of the aspects that are available to us in this life? People say we only use a portion of our brain, you know, whatever, 5% or something. And it's like, to me, that's the same thing. It's like there's so much more to us
Mm-hmm.
than we know. And if people are curious about that and they want to start like untangling some of these ideas about what they, you know, do I get to, am I permission, you know, can I consider this, or can I look into my intuition, or do I have permission to be more than, or like know more than about myself? It's like, yeah, like I just want a safe place for people to play with form, play with spirit, play with ideas, explore things and check to see how it feels, and to start trusting what feels right, what feels aligned, even if it feels fucking wild. It's like, I never thought I'd pick that. Um, and I also love it when people think they're going to go in and do something heavy. They have like predetermined ideas about
Right.
what they think I do or what they think happens. Like even listening to you, some of it I think probably scared some people. Like they're like, oh shit, you know, throwing phones and whatever. But like what I love is when people are like, oh, when we went into this exercise, let's say it's going into the past, because one of the weeks we go into the past. It's like, this isn't, and I frame it properly. This is not reliving anything.
Yeah.
But like they were dreading and they admitted, oh my God, I thought it was going to be this. And they end up like delighted, like
Yeah.
like lit up, like understood, clear. And it's not because they bawled their eyes out for 3 hours. They actually
Right.
received an immediate, like, oh, I see. Oh my God, you know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's hard to explain, but it's just like an opening and an insight that helps just dissolve all of that idea. And they're like, I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be like this drudgery,
Right.
heavy. And I'm like, we're not made like that. Like
Right.
you're not made like that. You're
Right.
not made to be burdened and heavy. It's the judgments that we apply that are the burden.
Yes.
It is the beliefs that we picked up that are the heavy.
Yep.
So when you get that sort of, when an idea is collapsed or it's, you know, evaporates, or like it transmutes, it doesn't necessarily, it just evolves, right?
Yeah.
When that happens, it's like the caterpillar coming out of the cocoon as the butterfly.
Yes.
And like they're surprised at that, because a lot of the work, you know, the self personal development work is sold as like heavy and like you're going to lose your shit and you're going to be on the floor, you know, wetting yourself and like whatever. And it's going to be messy. And it's like, sometimes I think it's harder to realize that expansion also is through joy, and like you can
Mm-hmm.
have like these openings that are just so unexpected. And I
Right.
think that happens on purpose to help people trust that you're safe to do this work. Like you're safe, you're at the right
So
place.
do
If you're
I.
a little bit curious, you've got you. And I loved that when the last group was like, they understood it more and more in each session. Like, do you see how you just had your back? Do you see that you
Mm-hmm.
always have, you're always safe? And it's just like so wonderful to be able
Yeah.
to show it, because if I didn't speak it, they wouldn't have. In a way, you just kind of let things go and you just let, but it's like, no, we got to stop. I got to acknowledge what that just was.
Right.
You just had you. Do you see? And it's like, we have to have that acknowledgement piece in there, at least in the beginning, like training wheels,
That's
to be
huge.
like, I never would have like stopped to acknowledge that. So like, and like that needs to become a practice. And it's a part of my daring to suck model, which is a separate thing. But it's like, that was a big piece of like, one reason I was stuck was because I didn't stop and acknowledge things I had done or learned. And I hadn't looked at the process and who I had to be and what I changed. And it's such a huge piece. And
It is.
thank you. This has been like, it flew by. I hope, I hope you're leaving with a deeper understanding and a
Yeah.
broader awareness and a realization that that you are so much more, that there is so much more, but not in a place of wanting to overwhelm, in a place of wanting to untangle, to support, and to guide. It's like guide you through the gauntlet that is the human experience, but like feeling at home, sovereign in your throne, calling the shots, but also having a very deep, full experience here. Because I think that's like, what else are we doing here? I mean, I understand. I don't mean to open up another thing, but I also understand that like there are people that are not here to do what we're talking about. They're just not. So we have to understand that not everybody is doing this. Only people that are interested in this conversation are here for this. There are people that
that was a hard
NPCs.
Yep.
We're just responsible for our lens, how we're seeing things, and how we're interacting with the pieces and parts outside of us, but inside of us too.
Yep, absolutely.
And I love that we're walking this together, and I'm so grateful for your friendship and your support, personally and professionally, and the work that you do to help other people. Like I said, just reach for the stars, but to actually try it on and walk around and be like, hey, this is really good. Maybe in my real life, I'll go looking into this, But yeah, no, I love it. And I thank you so much. And
thank you.
We're obviously going to do this again because we have more to talk about.
There's so much. As soon as I said the narcissist empath thing, I'm like, oh, we have so much stuff to cover. It's all good. I'm here. Absolutely.
So notes, anything we've mentioned will be in the show notes, links to courses and communities and all of those things are available to you in the show notes. And if you have any questions, please give us the like, the follow, the subscribe, and leaving a review, obviously, would be amazing if you want to do that.
Yes, absolutely. That would be amazing.
Thank you so much, my love.
Thank you.
All right, my love. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for joining us in that powerful conversation. If you feel ready to connect more fully with your intuition, I invite you to join the next round of Tap Into Trust Yourself. It's 6 weeks of embracing and embodying your intuition, where you learn how to clear the noise and realign with your head, your heart, your body, and your soul. When it's time to take confident, grounded action in your life, this isn't just about understanding intuition, it's about living it. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if today's episode spoke to you, leave a review. Tell us what you think. Your feedback really helps us reach others who are ready to step into their own power. Also, if you have any questions or want to connect with Ahsaki and me, use the links below in the show notes. We would love to hear your thoughts, answer any questions you have, and support you in taking the next step on your journey. Let's tap in and trust what's waiting for you. We'll see you next time.